Social forces that shape our lives. Every social experience we have affects us in at least some small way. In modern industrial and post-industrial societies, however, there are 4 familiar influences that have special significance in the socialization process. They are the family, schooling, peer groups, and the mass media. The family. The family is the most important agent of socialization because it represents the center of children's lives. Babies are almost totally dependent on others, and the responsibility of meeting their needs almost always falls on parents and other family members. At least until the start of schooling, the family is responsible for teaching children cultural values, attitudes, and prejudices about themselves and others. Family-based socialization is not entirely intentional. Children learn continuously from the kind of environment that adults create for them. Whether children learn to think of themselves as strong or weak, smart or stupid, loved or simply tolerated, and whether they believe the world to be safe or dangerous, largely stems from this early environment that adults create. Parenting styles aside, parental attention is important in the social development of children. Physical contact, verbal stimulation, and openness from parents and others all encourage intellectual growth. The family also confers on children a specific social position. That is, parents not only bring children into the physical world, they also place them in society in terms of race, ethnicity, religion, and class. In time, all of these elements become part of a child's self-concept or idea of him or herself. Of course, some aspects of social position may change later on, but social standing at birth affects us throughout our lives. In many ways, then, parents teach their children to follow in their footsteps. Schooling. Schooling stretches children's social world to include people with social backgrounds that differ from their own. As children encounter social diversity, they learn the significance society gives to people's race and sex, and they often act accordingly. For instance, studies document the tendency of children to gather together in playgroups composed of one race and gender. Formally, schooling teaches children a wide range of knowledge and skills, but schools provide a host of other lessons informally through what sociologists call the hidden curriculum. Activities such as spelling tests and sports teach children key cultural values such as competitive success. Children also receive countless formal and informal messages supporting their society's way of life as morally good. Moving beyond the personal web of family life, children entering school soon discover that evaluations of skills like reading and arithmetic are based on impersonal, standardized tests. Here the focus changes from who they are to how they perform. Of course, the confidence or anxiety that children develop at home can have a significant effect on how well they perform in school. School is also most children's first experience with rigid formality. The school day runs on a strict timetable, and children are encouraged to conform to impersonal rules and be on time. Not surprisingly, conformity and punctuality are the same kinds of behavior expected by most of the large organizations that will employ these same children, later in life. Schools also socialize children with regard to gender. Although gender roles are evolving, in the first years of school, boys often take part in more physical activities and spend more time outdoors, while girls tend to be less active. Gender distinctions continue into the later grades and persist right through college. Women, for example, encounter pressure to choose degrees in the arts or humanities, while men are steered toward the physical sciences. The peer group. By the time they enter school, children have also discovered the peer group, a social group whose members have interests, social position, and age in common. A young child's peer group is generally made up of neighborhood friends. Later, peer groups are composed of friends from school or elsewhere. Unlike the family and the school, the peer group allows young people to escape from the direct control of adults. With this newfound independence, members of peer groups gain valuable experience in forming social relationships on their own and developing a sense of themselves apart from their families. Peer groups also give young people the opportunity to discuss interests that may not be shared by adults, such as fashion and popular music, or are not approved of by parents, such as violent movies or video games. For the young, the attraction of the peer group lies in the ever-present possibility of activity not permitted by adults. For the same reason, parents express concern about who their children's friends are. In a rapidly changing society, peer groups often rival parents in influence, as the attitudes of parents and children separate along the lines of a generation gap. The dominance of peer groups is typically strongest during the teenage years, as young people begin to break away from their families and think of themselves as responsible adults. At this stage of life, young people often show anxious conformity to peers, because this new identity and sense of belonging eases some of the anxiety brought on by breaking away from the family. The conflict between parents and peers may be more apparent than real, however, for even during the teenage years, children remain strongly influenced by their families. Peers may guide short-term concerns such as fashion and musical taste, but parents retain greater influence over the long-term goals of their children. One study, for example, found that parents had more influence than even best friends on young people's educational aspirations. The mass media. The fourth major influence on social development is the mass media. Impersonal communications directed to a vast audience. The term media is a Latin word meaning middle, suggesting that the media function to connect people. Today, more than ever, the mass media, TV, radio, and newspapers, have a great impact on our lives. For this reason, they are an important element in the socialization process. TV, introduced in 1939, has rapidly become the dominant means of communication throughout the world. Just how dependent on TV are we? Figures vary by group, nation, class, and gender, but average hours may well keep a TV on for 7 hours or more each day. Years before children learn to read, watching TV has become a regular habit, and as they grow up, young girls and boys spend as many hours in front of a TV as they do in school. Indeed, children spend as much time watching TV as they do interacting with their parents. Family, schooling, peers, and mass media all have an impact on how we are socialized as children. Each of these social influences has the power to shape our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Yet, as free humans, we also have the ability to act back on society and, in so doing, shape our own lives in the world we live in, as is evident in the changes that have occurred in gender roles in the last 30 years.